Welcome everyone to Just Onside. I'm your host Ahmed Badjo Baghdadi, and I am joined by the man who just doesn't believe in time management, Uwais Ahmed, and the man who sometimes confuses this with a cricket podcast, Ayub Patel. How are we doing, gents?
Uh, I'm better than Ayub. I'll let Ayub speak for himself, but doing well. Thank you, Badge. Nice to have you back as well. Glad to hear that you've fully recovered and we should have a good show. Good.
Uh, for me, after I think it's they say that supporting Leeds is bad for your health. I think last Sunday proved to be the case because I was absolutely fine in the morning. After the result, I've taken a really bad turn, so I've been feeling quite rough. But hopefully I can get through the hour. And I hope it's no longer than an hour, Wes.
Yeah, I leave for 1 week. Well, not even a week, one episode, and you take it to 90 minutes. 90 minutes, Uwais Ahmed.
It's not even been a minute and a half, and both of you have got your digs in. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's no,
I
it's
mean,
okay.
you would have actually thought with two of us, it would have been a slightly smaller show.
Smaller
But,
show, yeah.
but it's not to be the case.
No, no, no. But again, boys, I appreciate you stepping up in my absence. Ayub, you're currently making me look bad because because you're rocking up whilst you're ill. But
Well, I
no,
had to. I mean, if I've been criticising the Leeds players for not having a backbone, no spine, no fight, no spirit. So I've literally come out of my sick bed, which is behind me, for an hour.
no. We appreciate
I'll
it. We
be in bed
appreciate it.
in about an hour's time again.
And even though you did go along last week, your views, I especially like the VAR piece and the connection to cricket. Maybe is something we can take off them. You lost me on the percentages and fractions, but we will not go down that road any further. But yeah, no, good stuff, guys. Kicking off this week, we are going to focus on the Champions League results that transpired over the last few days. First up, we had Chelsea at at home or away to Real Madrid. They were away, right? Yeah, Chelsea
Yes.
away to Real Madrid. Coming out of that with a 2-0 defeat. Not the greatest result for them. I didn't really see any fight from them either. But we'll go more into that in a moment. And Man City steamrolling Bayern Munich 3-0. It was about as comprehensive a win as you can get. We also had the other two games with Benfica and Inter, with Inter picking up a 2-0 win, and AC Milan. What? AC Milan beating Napoli 1-0, which was took a lot of people by surprise. Not myself, but a lot of people. But yeah, I just wanted your thoughts, guys, on the Chelsea and City games in particular. So the floor is yours. Let me know how you feel and take it away.
Yeah, I'll go first if that's okay. You, I think just on this, I'll start with the City game first, given that occurred on Tuesday. Just starting from a Bayern Munich perspective, it's interesting, right? This was Thomas Tuchel, one of the kind of crucial situations. Champions League quarter final, you brought in obviously a few weeks before once Bayern Munich got rid of Julian Nagelsmann, and inside of a week, they are out of the German Cup, beaten by Freiburg, and now look like they're heading out of the Champions League quarterfinals as well. Nagelsmann had top five winningest Bayern Munich coach with 2.16 points per game. Given that they'd given him, I don't want to go off too much on a tangent, but a 5-year contract when they appointed him, it always felt quite bizarre to me that they moved on from him at a time when they'd just beaten PSG in the last 16, 3-0 on aggregate. They were still well placed in the league, still alive in the German Cup. And now inside of a week, it seems to have gone sideways quite quickly. Yeah, I think from a Man City perspective, I think we spoke about it from on a previous podcast that they've really come into some serious form, similar to the kind of City that we've seen in previous seasons. I think their last 7 games before the last 2 that they played, we'd already commented that they'd scored 27 goals, conceded 2. Well, that's now 34 goals and conceded 3 in their last 9, having won all 9 games. I think what you see with City now when they're coming up against, especially this season, the Champions League, or at least right now, is this perfect setup that they've got with their personnel. Previously, Guardiola has had accusations leveled against him that he slightly outthinks himself in some of these big games in Champions League. He played a diamond at Anfield many years ago, I remember, in a crucial game in the knockout stages. He'd never played a diamond before. They lost that tie. If you remember, they didn't play a holding midfielder in the final against Chelsea, which many thought was quite an interesting move. They lost, obviously, that final as well. And there's been many other occasions against Lyon and other games where it feels like sometimes Guardiola does come up with a tactic that you sometimes question. Now, far be it for us to question his credentials, but you got the feeling maybe that with Tuchel there was this narrative that was building after the Champions League that he might try something interesting. But I think right now he's got supreme confidence in this setup, that he's got this kind of back four with Stones coming into the midfield. All the back four have got strength, physicality, pace. He's playing that box in midfield with Stones coming in to create that box and that overload in midfield, which is also opening up so much space for the wingers and getting the ball through midfield into them, which is then allowing them to attack the defensive line. So I think City right now are playing with supreme confidence. I think in terms of the game itself, there were some moments there for Bayern Munich where you feel like if the game was still 2-0 at half time, after the first leg, you feel like Bayern Munich may still have an opportunity to make it interesting at the Allianz, but a 3-0 deficit is difficult to overturn away goals or no away goals, really. But there were a couple of situations which I think will give Bayern some hope that they can still maybe make this a little bit anxious for City in the second leg. You had the Musiala chance at 0-0, which was crucial. Ederson was clearly diving the other way, a huge block by Ruben Diaz. I think that was a great opportunity. And then even at 1-0 down in the second half, when Musiala has Sané clean through pretty much, he's got to play that ball in front of Sané, not to his feet. It took him a while to gather that ball. Diaz gets across, puts some pressure on the chance. But I think on the whole, City fully merited that victory. And they were clinical and ruthless, which is what we've seen in recent Premier League games and FA Cup games as well. So I think on the whole, you'd have to fancy City now to see the job through. Credit to Ayub, who kind of predicted on the last podcast that it should be fairly comfortable for City. I thought it'd be much narrower. And I think the performance suggested that Bayern still had some moments, but I mean, in the second half with Sommer and with Upamecano, in terms of some of the nervousness at the back, and I think you have to give City some credit for that for sure in terms of the way they pressed. But yeah, Bayern absolutely did not help themselves in that second half. But all credit to City. I think onwards and upwards, and they, as you mentioned in the last podcast, will take some stopping in this competition.
OS actually alluded to it. I did predict it was going to be 3-0. And he did. I mean, it was quite a detailed analysis that OS has done. And there were some opportunities for Bayern. But in the end, this is a slick machine. I just could not see Bayern getting a result. 3-0, it quite possibly should have been more in the end. I just can't see Bayern overturning it at all because Man City will score. Minimum number of goals that Bayern have to score will be at least 4. I can't see it. And I'm going to stick to my prediction. Man City will win the Champions League. Yaya Touré's curse has been lifted. It's a done deal.
It's a done deal. Wow. No, to be fair, it's not. It's probably the safest prediction out there right now. They are on a different level right now, and I would worry for any team that's coming up against them at the moment because they are just ruthless right now. And the way Grealish, Haaland, and even Stones in his new role that Pep's got him in, they are purring and they are just playing teams off the park. So I don't see a way back for Bayern either. What do you guys think for Chelsea? Do you think there's a chance at 2-0, or is that game set and match as well?
Well, I definitely feel that Chelsea have a better opportunity than Bayern Munich, and that's not just stating the obvious, being only 2 goals down compared to 3. I mean, if you look at the team that Chelsea put out, I mean, there's been a lot made up of the fact that they've obviously signed a lot of players. They've got a big squad, and I know the Champions League squad is a finite amount of players. But if you look at the lineup that they put out, they had at least, I would argue, 9 of their best players, 9 of their best first team players. If you look at that midfield across the 5, James, Kovacic, Fernandes, Kante, and Chilwell, I would argue that given the choice, that would be their middle 5, given the formation that they play. I would even argue Felix right now is a starter, given how threatening he looks in a lot of the games. They had Thiago Silva back. He's arguably still even at his advanced stage, their best defender. And then you still got, arguably still their first choice goalkeeper, and then Fofana and Koulibaly. So I would argue that's pretty much as good a team as they could have really put out in terms of the player personnel that they have. And they had some situations early on, especially with that little counter-attack that they put together, sending Felix through. He wasn't quite able to shake the defender. He got a shot away, but straight at Courtois. But they had some situations where you felt they are able to kind of get up the pitch with Sterling and Felix up front. I think the first half, however, as it went on, Real just exerted more and more pressure, more and more dominance on the ball. They moved it really sharply and really quickly in around Chelsea, and then they really started to lose their way, Chelsea, I thought. And I think the goal, I mean, perfect goal, perfect ball from Carvajal, vertical ball, vertical runners. That's what you have to do to try and kind of penetrate teams to get in behind. Arguably two of the best 5 players in the world right now. You can make that argument with Vinicius Jr. and Benzema. Benzema with that anticipation that's made him deadly over the last 3 or 4 years, leading the line for Real Madrid in the absence of other superstars. So, yeah, I think on the whole second half, I thought Chelsea acquitted themselves okay. Obviously, once you go down to 10 men, really poor from Cucurella when you kind of dissect it. I mean, I'm not sure where he's going. Put Chilwell in a right bind, having to cover him. Not saying Chilwell should have done that, but I mean, panic does set in, right? And it was a clear red card. But I think thereafter was obviously losing the second goal puts them in a real difficult position, but you felt it was coming. Thereafter was they managed the game, I thought, fairly well. Had the situation at the end with Mason Mount with a great block from the former Chelsea player Rudiger. But I think if they can get it at Stamford Bridge, I think, again, the cliche, if they can get an early goal, there's not away goals. I think if they can get that place rocking, they've not scored for a while, but I do fancy them to score. I think Real just look like they can be got at. And I think if Chelsea can get an early goal, it's going to boost that crowd. And listen, it's the quarterfinals. Chelsea have a funny history with this competition, and I wouldn't put it past them. Real strong favourites. But yeah, Chelsea need to turn it into one of those kind of emotional nights at Stamford Bridge, and who knows? Yeah,
I absolutely agree with Ois. I think the team that Chelsea put out was probably the strongest team that they could have put out, and I think they'll be bitterly disappointed. I mean, obviously the Chilwell sending off was pivotal because I think 1-0, and I think Chelsea, I wouldn't say they were the favourites, but they would certainly been strong contenders in the return leg. I'm sort of almost like you, Oris. I think there is a cause for optimism. I don't think it's over and done with. I think maybe if this is the team that he's going to play again, there's a strong chance, because I thought the team was as strong as it could be, and I think it was probably going to ask a lot of questions. And again, it's small moments. I mean, obviously, Ois is famous for his moments, and that Felix opportunity right at the start. Maybe if that goes in, you never know. It's a slightly different story. So I don't think Chelsea are out of it. It is a small mountain that they need to overcome, but I think there's still an opportunity. So I think with Chelsea, there's a chance. For City, they're through to the final. Not a problem at all.
I'm gonna disagree with both of you on that front, where I think that game's dead and buried. I don't see how Chelsea come back into it. I think that game, the first leg, clearly showed. I mean, it's been their problem all season. They need a number 9, maybe more than United need a number 9, because they build up their attacks, but then they have nothing to hit, and it's constant. It's a constant theme in their matches to this day. And when they do find their attackers in goal-scoring positions, they're not clinical. They are not strikers. They're like fluid forwards that can play anywhere across the front three, which is all good and well. But then you need the goals, and this team does not have the goals. And it doesn't matter which 3 you put out. They're decent. They're good footballers in their own right, but there's no man that is going to score the goals necessary to get them through. Their best defender isn't even registered. Well, the best defender on form, Badiashile, isn't even registered for him to play in the Champions League, and that's down to, again, something we've touched on previously, the plethora of players that they've just upped and signed without again, it seems like no strategy. So they had to pick and choose who they wanted in their squad. And unfortunately for them, their most informed defender is not even in the squad. When you have the likes of Benzema, Vinicius Jr., just Real Madrid in general, 2-0 lead, first leg, and I don't see any goals in that Chelsea team, so I don't see any way back for Chelsea whatsoever. So I'm giving them no chance of getting anything at the bridge. So I think Real will comfortably get through that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think Real are strong favourites. I was kind of also just wanted to get your quick thoughts, if we could, on the other game or the other games. I mean, Inter Milan, in the other kind of half of the draw, Inter Milan look like they will probably see this through against Benfica at home, having gained a 2-0 win. But I am keen to hear your thoughts about the Milan-Napoli game. That's one that's been really interesting to me. Napoli were favourites when the draw was put together the way it was, in terms of that half of the draw to get to the final, right? They were the favourites in that side of the draw. They've obviously lost 1-0 now at AC Milan. If you've not seen Brahim Diaz's skill in the middle of the park for that goal, that was fantastic. But I definitely strongly encourage watching that. I just want to hear your thoughts, because that's a 1-0 deficit. They go back home. Osimhen didn't play in this game. He's been injured, obviously, for a little while. The manager has indicated that he'll be back for the second leg. Obviously, they played AC Milan in the league without him a couple of weeks ago, and they lost 4-0 at home. So AC Milan will take a lot of confidence that they can beat them there. And a player that I know you like very much, Rafael Leao, had an amazing game, I thought, in that game, especially some of the finishes. So how do you see that game panning out on the basis that Osimhen plays?
Well, funnily enough, I think it ruins a lot of people's bracket, that side of the road, because I think a lot of people had Napoli and Benfica to go through. I mean, like, still very easily happen. Mm-hmm. But Inter Milan beating Napoli away was huge for them. They're in the driving seat in that one. I'd say 2-0. They're in the driving seat to bring that home. So Benfica, a lot of people's dark horses. It's not looking good for them at the moment. However, AC Milan Napoli. Now, this is something I was saying to a few of my friends. AC Milan is potentially the worst draw Napoli could have got. And that is solely for the fact that to every other European team left in the competition, maybe bar Inter, Napoli are just, when you think of them, you think people will have fear. There will be that sense of dread given how they've performed this season. And there's also that mystique there that they're not usually in the Champions League at this stage, and given the players how they're performing, I think having AC Milan was the worst thing that could have happened for them, purely for the fact AC Milan know all about Napoli. They know all about Napoli, like you said just a couple of weeks ago. They beat them 4-0 at their own patch, so they don't have that same aura against a Milan. Whereas if an English side, German side, whatever, Spanish side came up against them, there'd definitely be that sense of these lot could have us here. And they've got the threats in Kvaratskhelia, Osimhen. They've got a great squad throughout. Mm-hmm. But given that Milan know all about them, Milan know how to beat them, and they proved that. It was a fantastic goal, like you say, allude to the Brahim Diaz spin, and then the strike from Ben Nasser, unbelievable. But they then frustrated Napoli. Napoli had a few chances early on, but after that, once Milan got their goal, they frustrated the hell out of Napoli. And they have players that can do damage as well. Rafael Leao, on the break, he can beat anyone one-on-one. The turn of pace. Individually, you may look at that Milan team and think they're not as good as, obviously, Milan teams of yesteryear, but they are such a good cohesive unit. It's unbelievable. Everyone plays their part unbelievably well in that side. Going to Napoli, I know Spalletti has already said that Victor Osimhen will be back. I think he even said that prior to the game, that he'd be back for the second leg. They are, however, going to be losing. Well, they've lost Kim Min-jae to suspension and Zambo Anguissa to suspension. That's two huge losses for them. Two key players, Kim Min-jae especially, being a rock at the heart of that defense. So it's going to be an interesting one. Napoli could blow them out of the water. They could absolutely just play them on the second leg at home and blow them out of the water. There's every chance of that happening. But Milan, again, like I said, they know how to beat them. They know how to beat them at their ground. So that is probably the most well-poised tie left in the draw, to be honest. That could go either way. So I'm really, really actually looking forward to that and to see how that pans out. If any of you have any other thoughts on those two games.
No, I just think you're right. That's probably the one that's well placed in terms of a tie. I agree with you. I still fancy Napoli just to turn it around, but it'll be interesting just to see how they deal with that pressure because they are under pressure to get to the final. They were favourites in that bracket or that side of the bracket. So I think the games are next week. So yeah, looking forward to those.
I think Thierry Henry also suggested on CBS that we all know Napoli play good football, but we need to see them against how they deal with pressure in these kind of situations. So it'll be good to see if they are truly what everyone's currently calling one of the best Serie A sides. So we'll see. Moving on to something quite controversial that Jamie Carragher brought up in the week on Twitter. he was suggesting. Pains me to say this.
as the host, you have to.
No, yeah, I get no choice on the matter. Jamie Carragher took to Twitter and suggested Virgil van Dijk was quote unquote miles better than Nemanja Vidic. Both in their pomp, both in their prime. He's claiming that Van Dijk is a far superior defender in every aspect. Some of the things he did mention were the fact that Vidic, Terry Ferdinand, they've had bad seasons. Virgil's currently going through one himself. And the fact he's alluded to that Van Dijk has the impact he's had on this Liverpool side is like no other. And he's been the best player in the league alongside Kevin De Bruyne for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. And he claimed no other defender has done this. Now, my gripe with this matter is A, he's claiming Van Dijk's better, which in my opinion, he simply isn't. B, Vidic was on top of his game throughout. He alluded to the fact that do you not remember the performances against Fernando Torres? Now, this myth, I think if you've been anywhere near Twitter, football Twitter over the last few days, you will have seen this myth has been put to bed well and truly. There's been 15 games where Vidic has come up against Torres. Torres has scored 3 goals in 15 appearances against him. He's had tougher times with Drogba. So to come out with things like that, yes, Torres did give him a hard time in one or two of the games, but to just put it down to that and then just come out and flat out say Van Dijk is better and saying no other centre back has been close to being the best player in the league, whereas Nemanja Vidic has won Player of the Season twice, not once but twice, and he's in esteemed company when it comes to players that have won that twice,
especially defenders.
100%. So I took exception to that. I think a lot of football Twitter took exception to that. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on his controversial takes. Maybe you don't feel as strongly as I do about it, but yeah, I'd like to hear it from a non-United fan's point of view.
I mean, from just a defender point of view, I certainly think VVD has been an exceptional defender. I think obviously I think sometimes you get caught up in the moment, and then you reflect on his performances this season. But I think he's an exceptional defender. But on the point of Vidic was outstanding. He sustained it for a long period of time. I'm not as I suppose I'm not a United fan. I'm not a Liverpool fan, so therefore I've not got so much invested in this argument. But Carragher is right. He's a damn good defender, VVD, and I think he's certainly been one of the best players in the league for the last 2 or 3 years. So I agree with that. As to who's better, it's a flip of a coin.
Yeah, no, I think just on that,
was
So
our offense.
I think just on that, it was really interesting, right? Because I think the original Twitter spat, if we can call it that, was between kind of Carragher and Ferdinand. Rio Ferdinand obviously got involved and was defending his man, as we'd expect him to do so, right? I think it's really interesting because I think when Rio interviewed Virgil van Dijk not so long ago for one of his shows, Van Dijk actually put Ferdinand top of his greatest centre backs in the history of the Premier League. So glad to see Ferdinand quickly forgot about all of that when it was time to kind of return the compliment. But I think what I would say is, if you look at, to Ayub's point, if you look at what Virgil van Dijk has done since he got to Liverpool, it is quite sensational, actually, when you look at simply just the statistics and what he's meant for that football club. But look, Nemanja Vidic, unbelievable defender. If you look at his resume for United, 5 Premier League titles, 3 League Cups, 1 Champions League. I think he was voted, to your point, what you mentioned, Badge, twice, to win PFA Player of the Year. So that's unbelievable. 2 times, I think he was awarded FIFA Pro in the World 11. And I think he also made the Premier League Team of the Year. I think it was 4 times in the PFA Team of the Year. In terms of his resume is complete. There's not much there that's missing, if at all. I think when he joined United, I think at that time they reeled off 3 Premier League wins, titles in a row. So clearly he's had a strong impact on United. I wouldn't want to take anything away. And I agree with you on your point about Torres. Look, I think the reason why those moments stick in the memory is ultimately those are matches played between the 2 most important or most significant football clubs in this country. They're always televised, and therefore, when you have a situation where Liverpool go to Old Trafford and beat 4-1, and Torres, yes, he's had some good moments against Vidic, but listen, if you're a defender who has that many appearances at the highest level, you're going to have a few weak moments here and there. So I think all of us are quite balanced in that assessment. I think the thing about Van Dijk, though, is interesting. I mean, after coming from Celtic to Liverpool, if you look at his impact in the 3 full seasons that he's had at Liverpool Football Club, it is unprecedented. His first full season, they get 97 points. They finish a point behind City. They had the joint best defense in the league. They had the best defense in the league, I should say. The next season, they win the title by posting, I think, 92 or 93 points. They had the best defense in the league. Thereafter, the season after that, obviously, he has the injury in October when Jordan Pickford collided into his knee, ruled him out for the whole season. So I'm not counting that. And then the season after that, they had the joint best defense in the league when they finished a point behind Manchester City. In all of his 3 full seasons as central defender for Liverpool Football Club, in his 3 full seasons, their points total, and I know it's not just down to him, but he's a key player for them in that side. They achieved a higher points total in each of those seasons than any of Vidic's 5 Premier League title wins. Now, that's not to knock Vidic. What I'm simply trying to say is that we're talking about, as you've said, a damn good defender. So in terms of his resume, you'd have to give the nod to Vidic, right, in terms of the titles he's won. But Van Dijk's also won a Premier League title. He's also won or been awarded Premier League Player of the Year, and he was in the same year awarded PFA Player of the Year as well. He's also made the, I think, Premier League Team of the Year, 3 times. So he's well on his way, and he's still building, right? So you're right. It's been a difficult season for him. But I think the comparison is at least fair, let's say. I think maybe Carragher went overboard in terms of saying Miles better. I absolutely disagree with that. But I think the 2 players are definitely in the ballpark in terms of, in that kind of conversation for best defenders in the Premier League in history, with Van Dijk obviously still building his resume because he's probably still got at least 2 or 3 seasons left at Liverpool.
No, I didn't want this to come off as the fact that I don't think Virgil van Dijk's a good defender. I think he's a fantastic defender. Like, there's no 2 ways about it. Even though I'm a United fan, I can recognise how good he is, and he is every bit as good as they say. My gripe with what Carragher said was basically he just came out with a blanket statement saying he's miles better, and then his points to prove it are just ridiculous. The Torres comparison, if that's the case, then Martial and Rashford have given Van Dijk just as many sleepless nights. If we're taking those into account, the fact that no one else has been close to being the best player in the league, where Vidic has won it twice. That's my exception to what he's saying. If he thinks if he wants to say he's a better defender, it's no problem. But the way he claimed it, and then he just put out a blanket statement and backed it up with facts that aren't really facts, and they were disproved within like 20 minutes of being on Twitter. That's, I think, what everyone's gripe was with him. But
It's
fun.
I was just going to say it's also a difficult comparison, right? Their playing styles are fundamentally different, right?
Yeah, of course.
And you're right. The miles better statement, I think we can all agree that. I don't see that. I don't see that at all. But in terms of his other additional statement where he talked about the impact he had on Liverpool, it's difficult to make a case for any player that has had an impact on a team.
I would argue
that he has.
I would argue
more than Van Dijk.
Alisson has had more of an impact on that Liverpool team than Van Dijk has. I think Alisson has had the biggest impact on that Liverpool team more than anyone. But because even before Alisson got there, Van Dijk was there, but they were shipping stupid goals because they had keepers that weren't capable of saving on points or what have you. But yeah, that's something we'll go into. So I was thinking, what would be good for the Just Onside crew to discuss with regards to this? I thought it'd be nice to have a little change of pace and maybe do our top 3 centre backs ever in the Premier League history. So, oh wait, I'm going first, aren't I?
Yeah, I'd like you to go first on this one. Yeah, and just for the viewers, we've not shared our lists with one another, so we're also hearing this for the first time. Not. So let's have it, Badge. What is it? Are we talking Ferdinand, Vidic, Yapstam? Yeah, we're done. So.
Hey, that's funny you say Yapstam, because Yapstam, some journalists actually responded to Carragher saying Van Dijk's not even the best Dutch centre back there's ever been in Premier League history, with Carragher responding, he had 3 good seasons, but then he was shipped off. Well, from my count, Van Dijk's had 3 good seasons. So again, one of his arguments falling flat. But yes, so going back to the top 3. So for me, I was going to do it in no particular order, but then that seems to be a no-no with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a list. You're ranking players. I mean, whether it's centre backs, whether it's managers, central midfielders, goal scorers.
Top 3. I wasn't going to do it in any particular order, but I will for you guys.
Well, the top 3 has to be in order.
No, it doesn't.
Right, over to you.
Then otherwise, if it's a top 3, or if it's not a top 3, then it's just 3. But if we're doing a top 3, it then means there has to be some sort of ascension.
but I'll play along. No problem. So I was thinking about it, and obviously there's a lot of recency bias. So I was trying not to fall into that trap, and I was trying to make sure I also include players of previous seasons, so before in the 90s. So number 3 on my list is, and I hate that I have to include him given his some of the antics he's been up to on the pitch and some of the things he said, but John Terry, without a shadow of a doubt, is comfortably one of the best defenders of all time in the Premier League. A man that wasn't blessed with pace, but he made up for it with everything else: positioning, leadership, reading of the game. Just unbeatable, pretty much unbeatable in the air. Just a stalwart for Chelsea. And honestly, if anyone puts him at number 1, I wouldn't even argue it. Because you can absolutely make the case for him to be there. On my list, he makes number 3. As a defender, like I said, phenomenal. The longevity, how long he did it for. There was a point in time where he actually dropped out of the team as well, but he made his way back in. And he was a true leader. And just, if you didn't support Chelsea, you'd probably hate him. But my God, you'd want a defender like that at your club. 10 times out of 10. So I think John Terry sits at 3 with me. Now the top 2 are very interchangeable, I must say.
Right, okay.
This is going to come off as so biased, but it really isn't. Who shall I put at number 2? Okay, at number 2, I hate to say it because he's probably more complete, but I'm going to go Rio Ferdinand as number 2. Rio Ferdinand was, like, people get excited about Van Dijk, and I think Van Dijk, again, he's superb in what he does, but Rio Ferdinand was Van Dijk before Van Dijk. And he was exceptional, exceptional. Like he can do everything. Play with it on the ground. He was one of the first few actually amazing ball playing central defenders. Reads the game well, heads well, tackles well, leader on the pitch. Just he can be no nonsense, but then he can be so elegant with the ball as well and playing it out from the back. He had everything. He had absolutely everything. On another day, if you ask me, he'd probably be my number one. But on this day, he will remain at two. Because I just love Nemanja Vidic. Nemanja Vidic, honest to God, if I could bring anyone back to Man United, I would bring back Nemanja Vidic in a heartbeat. The peak Nemanja Vidic was incredible. We signed him when Chelsea were actually winning the league title. They'd won it, I think, the previous 2 years to us signing him. And as soon as he came in, the impact that he made. Funnily enough, him and Evra both had stinkers of debuts, but the way they picked up after that and the career he had at Manchester United, absolutely incredible. A warrior through and through. Actually, not bad on the ball. He was decent on the ball, but it's just the fact that he plays next to Rio Ferdinand made him look just didn't really. It made him look a bit worse than he really was, but he had everything to his game. Everything. He puts it on the line every game he plays. Just the man you want, literally. Like he'll drag you through games. He won't give strikers any rest. Like he's on them like a rash. Goes through them if he has to. He does everything he needs to for the team. Just literally the best defender I have consistently watched throughout my life. And what I do to like have him again, like I said, it's interchangeable with him and Rio. I think the top two are, as a United fan, we were very, very blessed that was our centre-back pairing for years upon years. And again, like Rio, Terry, the longevity that he had at Man United and the level at which he performed consistently, it's just undeniable. Absolute greatness. And yeah, so Nemanja Vidic will round out my top three at number one. And I'd just like to say before I pass on to you guys, some honourable mentions are obviously Vincent Kompany, superb defender. If anyone does have him in top three, again, not one I'd argue for what he did with Manchester City. He was one of the key components of that, absolute leader once again. Tony Adams, Sol Campbell, they were incredible for Arsenal in their respective times of the club.
And Spurs, let's not forget.
Yeah, sure. And someone who doesn't get the credit, I feel, that he deserves, maybe because he wasn't at Chelsea as long as I thought he was, actually. But Ricardo Carvalho was an incredible centre-half. Absolutely unbelievable. Next to John Terry, they, again, much like Rio and Vidic, what a pairing that was. And I think Carvalho goes down the wayside sometimes when we come to these kind of conversations, but he was superb. He had everything. And then obviously Van Dijk would be an honourable mention. And I think that's about it. I don't think I'm missing it. Yap Stam. How could I forget Big Yap? Big Yap, if he stayed for longer, I am convinced he would be either one or in the top three. But that's my list, gents. Terry, Ferdinand, Vidic. Ferdinand Vidic can change daily, but today is Vidic.
No, that's a good list. And just before you go, just one quick point. I think Stam did win. I think he won 3 Premier Leagues in a row. I'll have to double check that. 5 trophies in his 3 years. And you're right. I think if it had ended the way it did for him and Ferguson, you're talking perhaps maybe undisputed in terms of getting to that point where just because pace, strength, reading of the game, just superb. But that's a really good list, Badge. Superb. Man United.
I think it's a list that someone could have predicted, but I mean, it's the truth.
The fact that you're a Manchester United supporter and you chose a Manchester United legend.
It looks
2.
Bad,
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, come on.
No, absolutely good list. Go on, are you?
I must confess, do you know after you name your first two, I thought it was going to be exactly the same list as mine because at number 3, I had Rio Ferdinand, and you've beautifully articulated exactly what sort of player he was. And I mean, I've got an affinity to Rio because he did play for us. He played for us for a few years, and he was a Rolls Royce of a defender. What I liked about him, I'm not going to add too much because in a sense I'm going to repeat myself, but he was one defender who read the game so well. Very rarely did he go to ground because he read the game so well. So I'm not going to add too much because you've perfectly encapsulated exactly how good a player he was. Number 2, JT. Big JT, John Terry. Absolutely. You are absolutely right. He was a proper defender. A defender who was a leader, who was strong, good up sort of with his feet as well. I think sometimes people don't quite realise how good he was with his feet as well. So for me as well, he was an outstanding defender. And again, I'm not going to add too much because you've said many
we'd
things
be
about him.
remiss to mention his goal scoring attributes as well. This man could score. I think his highest total was ridiculous. I swear it's close to double digits, or maybe it even was. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's something perhaps that is sometimes ignored when we're talking about defenders because we're only talking about the defense. But offensively, he was always a threat, always put his body on the line, which is really what you would expect, that bravery, that sort of hero quality.
Just on that, he scored 41 league goals for Chelsea. That's significant.
For a centre-half. Wow.
Yeah, unbelievable. And my number 1, it's not going to be a surprise because it's a name that's been mentioned. But for me, my number 1 centre-back is Jaap Stam. And there's reasons for it as well. A, he was outstanding. He was a colossus. The sort of centre back that I think sort of you can build a team around. The game that really sort of stands out in my mind is that I always look at defenders. Are they up for the fight? There's a player that some fans will remember, Big Duncan Ferguson, a real villain, a real thug. A sort of player that I think every centre back must have been. He must have been an attacker that frightened the life out of them. The one defender that I always, in my mind, I remember always being up for the challenge against Big Duncan was Jaap Stam. Always was ready for the battle. They had some great tussles, and I think on the whole, it was always Jaap Stam because for me, there's been no better header of a ball in the Premier League than Big Duncan Ferguson, and he was a brute. He was an absolute savage beast, and not just for that, but the fact that he was outstanding. And I think it's always you alluded to the point that Ferguson, I think, has openly admitted the mistake that he made, selling Jaap Stam. So for me, those are the top 3. And just to add to what Baj was saying about the others, absolutely. But there's one that I think, sadly, injury maybe affected the significance of his career. Jonathan Woodgate. I know it's. I mean, I have an affinity to Jonathan Woodgate, but if he wasn't plagued with injuries, I think he would have been one of the best defenders ever. There was a game that we played against Arsenal once. This was Henry in his pomp. Woodgate absolutely marked him out of the game. It was almost a man-to-man job that he did. He had pace. He was a tremendous reader of the game, a great tackler. He would have been outstanding if it weren't for the injury. So my top 3 and my homage to Jonathan Woodgate.
I knew you'd get a Leeds player in there somewhere. I was thinking it was Lucas Radeby.
2 Leeds. Well, I got 2 Leeds players.
Oh,
Ferdinand
Rio,
and
Rio, of course.
No, that's a good list. And interesting one with the kind of Jaap Stam choice there. For me, he's not in my top 3, and that's mainly because he did not meet one of my key criteria, which was that longevity. And I think for what he did in the time that he had in the Premier League, absolutely, arguably unparalleled. But you just needed to see a little bit more, especially when both of you have articulated the level of competition there is with this list. So with this list, I took it very seriously, as always.
Shock.
And obviously we didn't, did we?
Yeah.
No.
We
Just
just
this,
whatever came to us.
that's not to suggest that in no way, shape, or form. The key criteria for me was
Before you go,
Hmm.
I am timing you on this, so don't think you've got all day. So go for it.
Thank you very much. Nothing like a bit of pressure.
And yes, and the meds are wearing off for me, so I've not got much time left.
No, I think look, when we put together this kind of topic, I was quite excited actually. Love these kind of lists. Key criteria for me, as it is for many positions, was kind of consistency, longevity. Those two are kind of roll into one. Kind of eye test. I want to watch them. What did I think when I watched them in terms of overtime? And lastly, kind of individual honors and kind of team honors. So that's kind of how I framed it and try to be as fair and objective as possible. So diving straight in. Third on my list is a player both of you have mentioned I've got in the list as well. So maybe that's the biggest compliment we can give to him. That's Rio Ferdinand. I had Ferdinand on my list third. If you look at his honours, 6 Premier League titles, 6 times Premier League Team of the Year, won 2 League Cup competitions, as well as 1 Champions League. I think in terms of his playing style, both of you have articulated the reasons why. Absolute Rolls Royce of a defender, superb. I felt when he joined from Leeds to Manchester United in 2002, I believe it was, he was seen very much as a footballer. He could play centre back, maybe even kind of foray out a little bit. I feel like at United, he pretty much then settled just to being a pretty good centre back in terms of just reading the game, not really going out playing too much, at least in terms of what I watched. And that's not to say he wasn't much of a baller. I just think they got him in a better structure at United, obviously under the greatest,
he didn't have to.
The greatest manager of all time as well. So I think in terms of what he achieved at Manchester United in terms of the honours, there's absolutely no dispute in that. The only 2 reasons why I didn't have him top 1 or even top 2 was A, he didn't score enough goals for me. That was important to me. He only scored 7 goals for Manchester United Football Club. He played over 300 times for them. You know, when you're splitting hairs, those are the kind of things at least that I'm looking at in terms of defining games. I remember that 1 goal left foot top corner against United when he swiveled inside the box, but you can't remember too many big moments when Ferdinand's delivered a goal. So 7 league goals, you'd expect a few more. And the other reason why I slightly pegged him down, and this is through no fault of his own, is that he arrived into a Manchester United team, under the greatest manager in the history of the Premier League, a team that had previously won stuff, won honours. So he was going into a dressing room full of a winning culture. Roy Keane, Gary Neville, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Barthez. No, you're talking a real good established culture of winning. Yes, he then took him also onto another level, and he deserves credit for that. But I think just in terms of that, playing under one manager for all bar 1 season under at Manchester United, his last season was under David Moyes. I think that helps stability, the culture, the level, the quality that he had around him. That's not to say others didn't. I just think he went into a team that was also kind of, predisposed to winning stuff, winning titles, winning big honors. So that's why I put him kind of third. No slight on him, top 3 Premier League defender of all time. In terms of number 2 on my list, I had Vincent Kompany second, and I'm glad that Badge already kind of put that comment out there. I wouldn't criticize anyone if they did have him in their top 3, but I think this one is a bit more personal for me. 4 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, 4 League Cups, also won individual honours with, I think, PFA Player of the Year as well, and I think that matters. I think the reason why I gave Kompany the nod at 2, again, eye test played a part, strength, pace, commitment, won titles under 3 different managers, led City to their first Premier League title. Now, some may argue it was inevitable after the Sheikh Mansour takeover, but I think he's played under different managers, and he's obviously led them to their first title in 2011, 2012, I think it was, with the famous Sergio Aguero goal. The reason why I gave him the nod over Rio, he scored 18 goals, but he scored arguably 2 of the biggest goals. And I know you're going to criticize me for those moments again, but for me, it's still that goal in April for their first title when he headed it past David De Gea in that midweek game. I remember the game. I can't remember. I mean, there have been, but I remember the hype going into that game. to deliver that moment for Manchester City. Then obviously they go on to win the title. And then a few years on under Guardiola with that long-range strike against Leicester when Aguero's pleading with him not to shoot, and he unloads a 30-yard screamer. If they don't win that game, chances are Liverpool win the title that season. And I think these are moments that just stay in your mind, stick in your mind. And just in terms of his, like I said, his leadership, his captaincy, he speaks well. I feel like fans of other clubs also like him a lot, in the sense that I wouldn't mind that type of personality playing for our football club. He was quite respectful, I thought, of other clubs as well. So for me, he was number 2. In terms of number 1, they say sometimes the most obvious answer is the right answer. And for me, it's undisputed, undoubted, it is John Terry. He's the best Premier League defender of all time. And there's a number of reasons for this. We've alluded to it. We'll come on to the goals in a moment, but over 490 appearances for Chelsea Football Club. In terms of honours that he won, 5 Premier League titles, 1 Champions League. Yes, the Champions League counts badge. The FA Cup, 5 FA Cups, 3 League Cups, 1 Europa League. He actually didn't play in the Europa League final as well, but that counts as well, badge under Rafa Benitez. But yeah, he won PFA Player of the Year. He was in the Team of the Year 4 times. The thing with John Terry, and I think you articulated it absolutely well, in terms of that leadership, the football that you spoke about, badge, underrated left foot. Remember, he used to always play left centre back for Chelsea Football Club, and not only was he a good passer into midfield, but he could also switch the ball with his left foot as well. Superb. The 2 main reasons why I gave him the nod, and he's always been the best defender in the league for me, is A, the goals, 41 Premier League goals for Chelsea, another 10 in European competitions. That pretty much beats out many of his other contemporaries. And I think that matters. Big games, big moments, big situations, scoring goals, helping his team win. But for me, the single biggest reason, and in my opinion, it cannot be argued, is that he led a defense during a 3-year run that we will never, ever see again. And that was those 3 years under Jose Mourinho in that 2004, 2005, 2005, 2006, and the next year after that. They won the title in those first 2 years. They conceded 15 Premier League goals in that first season under Mourinho. 15, 25 clean sheets. That's 2/3 of all games. 15 league goals conceded. Badge, you mentioned, formed a great partnership with Ricardo Carvalho. The season after that, they win the title again, posting another 90 points haul with 22 goals conceded. Again, the best defense in the league. That's 37 goals across 76 Premier League games. Unprecedented level of kind of defending. And yes, that defending was about the manager's psychology and the whole team working hard. No doubt about it. That's not just the defense. And then the 3rd year there afterwards, they were runner-up actually to Manchester United, but they had the best defense that year as well, with just conceding 24 goals. So that's 15, 22, and 24, 3-year run, winning 2 Premier League titles, coming a close second to United in the 3rd. There were many other seasons when they had the best defense or the joint best defense, but I think for that 3-year run and for that one season alone, it just, for me, I just remember that team watching them. If they went a goal up, it was a case of, right, put the kettle on, you can do a few other things, because they will not concede goals. So for me, and to be honest, it wasn't hard for me, John Terry. I really do think he's clearly the best Premier League defender of all time.
No, fair enough. I understand your points on that. And like I said in my list, if anyone put Terry at 1, I wouldn't argue it. And I'm not going to, as much as I want to. I'm not going to. But I was hoping this would be a bit more controversial, but this is all very cordial and friendly.
I mean, it would only be controversial if we intentionally made it controversial. But
This is true.
if we're sticking to, I suppose, facts and what we've seen, then in a sense, it was never going to be controversial. And the fact that we've met, I think all of us have mentioned at least 2 players that are part of the same list or of our lists. Alludes to that point, doesn't it? Really, that we're sort of commenting from the same page.
So given that, we've taken longevity into account here massively. But if we're strictly going off just peak, who are you picking? Just one. Just peak. This is why I think Ayub's his Yapstam pick may work out, because we're not talking longevity here. We're just talking single season at their best, at their peak. Are you sticking with the same man?
Yep, starting for me, absolutely. I mean, I don't think, obviously it's an opinion, but I don't think there's been a better CB because he ticks every single box. Because I think he was as strong as an ox. He was a wonderful defender, decent with the ball. He's got the Dutch pedigree, and he was always up to the challenge. And as I said, it's difficult to, or it's probably not fair to just pick a game or an opponent where he was probably always the better. But I think those battles with Ferguson, perhaps for me, are synonymous of why I consider him to be the best defender, because he was just outstanding. And the great Ferguson himself, he said he shouldn't have sold him. It was a
biggest
mistake.
regret. His biggest regret, no doubt. Uwais, would you change your mind? I feel like you're set in stone with Terry, but
no, actually, I would probably change my mind. But it's a difficult question. But I think just simply on recency bias, and I accept it. It's probably recency bias, but
my headset will come off. Just put it out there.
Watching Van Dijk play those few seasons for Liverpool Football Club, and it matters, right? Leading them to, their first Premier League title in so many years. It's your eyes that tell you that when you're watching a centre back just simply play the art of defending at the highest level in terms of managing 2-on-1 situations. Famously, there was that one against Musa Sissoko that I think I remember. He managed every single situation perfectly. It just never made a mistake for a few years. And look, he's had a few injuries recently, and that might be impacting some of his form. That's no excuse. I think he's had a hamstring injury recently, and then obviously the big knee situation after that Pickford. But I think just in terms of a player hasn't at least that I've watched, has another player hit the top height, the top level of defending that Van Dijk has? I've not seen it. I'm
not sure about that last bit, but otherwise, I can see how. I think that's where Van Dijk could come into this debate. If you're talking one sole season at peak, then potentially Van Dijk could come in top. But again, I just feel like Ferdinand did what Van Dijk does, but better. I think if Rio Ferdinand played in this day and age, in this the modern style of football, untouchable. I think he would simply be untouchable. Honestly,
I agree.
Do you think with Rio? I mean, we all had him in our top three, so again, that's the biggest compliment you can give him. Do you think my point about him going into a team that United have always had great players throughout Ferguson's reign? They've always got at least 4 or 5, maybe 6, like top class players, kind of best players in the league in their position, so to speak. Do you think that slightly, not saying dilutes, we went through the records, right? But do you think that slightly, with Van Dijk, it's that thing where you say, well, he led them to a title. Liverpool haven't won for so long. So it's a bit more amplified. Whereas with Ferdinand, you're going into a winning culture and you won stuff, and great, and you deserve your credits for that. But I think maybe sometimes what gets lost in that is the unbelievable individual quality of that one footballer.
I think if you look at, I mean, he played for West Ham. He was outstanding. And I think he made West Ham better for us, for Leeds. He certainly was instrumental in the relative success we had. So I think it's a tad unfair to say that he's joining a team that was already successful, because I think he is somebody that made any team that he played for better. So I certainly think that it obviously makes it easier to join a team that's already winning, but I think he certainly made United even better. And he certainly, I think, was an outstanding player.
Yeah, I don't think it dilutes it at all, to be honest. Purely for the fact to be great, you've got to keep winning titles, and not just keep winning titles. You've got to elevate the team as well. And when he came in, we were kind of meandering in Europe. We weren't really hitting the heights I feel like we should have been hitting at the time. He comes into the side. I know European performances, they don't improve overnight, but he definitely was instrumental along with Vidic in becoming, like, they would have been multiple time Champions League winners. But unfortunately, at the time, you're up against the great Barcelona sides who were pretty much untouchable around that time, because United, bar them, were comfortably the best team out there in Europe.
I hope you'll be keeping that same energy when we talk about other clubs falling short. I'm going to leave it at that.
Don't you be coming at me like that, bro.
Good.
No. But honestly, he would have been. They would have been. Those Barcelona sides were outrageous. So I do believe he not only came into a great side. You're right, he did. But then that's like saying anyone who signed for Manchester United in that period, it kind of diminishes from from what they did, which
for sure. And
I mean,
yeah, and he was voted 6 times in the PFA Team of the Year.
if anything, coming
That's-
into a great side means you've got to do more to then stand out, and he stood out. So is the reason he's in all of our lists.
Yeah.
He was superb. But yeah, moving on, guys, just quickly because I'm being conscious of time. Predictions for this weekend and which games stand out to you? Ayub, I'll let you go first, buddy.
Well, obviously, with me, there's only one game that really is of great significance. Well, I presume there's other games as well, but in terms of where my vested interests are, it's the Leeds versus Liverpool game, which is it's good. I'm fascinated now after the shambolic performance of last week to see how they react, and it is going to be quite important because I've got to be honest. Liverpool, they've had an indifferent season. Many experts are saying that really it shouldn't be a game which is a gimme for Liverpool, but I think Liverpool will win. But really what I'm looking for is the performance, because I just sort of think the game against Crystal Palace, there's a part of me thinks that it will have quite a significant impact. I think there's a lot of players there that didn't perform to a level that really they should do in the Premier League. I think there's a lot of players there with confidence levels low. If you put the mix in terms of the pressures that they're going to face, I think it's going to be a little bit too much. It's a Monday game, so at least I suppose it gives me an opportunity, or it gives the team an opportunity to find out exactly where they're positioned before the game. The only saving grace, and I say this, but I don't know whether it's going to be true or not, but most of the games or most of the teams at the bottom have quite tough fixtures. So hopefully with a bit of luck from Lee's point of view, come Monday, we may still be out of the bottom 3, which is key at this moment in time. I think psychologically, what you want to just try and do is every single week is be out of the bottom 3. So for me, the big game for me is obviously Leeds, but there are important games on Saturday and Sunday at the bottom.
I think before I pass on to you, Uwais, for myself, the 2 games that are key for me this weekend are Forest United. United travelling away to Forest with a depleted squad. No Marcus Rashford, no Licha Martinez, no Rafa Varane. Luke Shaw is a maybe. It's
I don't want to hear this.
No, but it's true. Like, we're still in the race for the top 4, which I was hoping we would have had settled by now, but unfortunately, we're still in the hunt for it. And with a depleted squad and Forest fighting for survival, it's going to be interesting. It's not going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. I think if Forest see that it's Lindelof Maguire, they might fancy it. No disrespect to Lindelof and Maguire, but I'm sure if Forest had a pick, they'd go up against them 2 as opposed to Varane and Martinez. So yeah, that is one obviously that'll have my vested interest. Another game, however, that I am very, very keen on watching is Aston Villa vs Newcastle, early kickoff tomorrow. That game has the potential to be a bit of a blockbuster. Newcastle, again, alongside us in the hunt for the top 4, and they just keep going. They keep going and keep getting these results. They've actually been playing some fantastic stuff over the last few weeks. They don't look like stopping, but they are up against the Villa side, who are just completely rejuvenated under Unai Emery. And Ollie Watkins, in the form he's in, is going to be a huge threat to Newcastle in their defence. So that one could go either way. That's not going to be an easy away trip for Newcastle. If they come out of there with 3 points, I think they're going to have all the momentum going forward, and they probably will secure that third or fourth place spot. But yeah, that's definitely 2 games for me that I will be keeping my eye on. So Uwais, I'll let you take away the big boys.
No, well, it's interesting. I'll take them in reverse order because you mentioned one of the games that is an interesting one now after yesterday's events at Old Trafford. I mean, Forest United yeah, Ayub will be keeping a close eye on that game. The worry I have for you, Ayub, is that you're going to take the weekend to recover from this illness that you're unfortunately suffering from, and then you'll have to watch Leeds on Monday night. Probably send you into another kind of whirlwind of emotions.
Well, it depends. If the results go Leeds' way, then perhaps it's not going to be so bad, because in a sense I've almost convinced myself, I know it's going to happen, that Leeds will lose on Monday. So if at least the results go our way, it's not going to be so bad.
Yeah.
And it's important, because the way I feel at the moment, I need a pick me up.
No, good. But yeah, no, just in taking them in reverse order, Badge, you're absolutely right. I think the Forest Manchester United game, where previously you think, well, if we have our first team, we can go there and we can pick up a result. And I think just now, when you look at the order of fixtures with Man United, they play obviously Forest away, like you mentioned, with a compromised squad, where you feel like now it could be a little bit of a battle potentially. They then have a blank week because I think they're playing in the FA Cup, and then they head to Spurs to play Spurs away. And if you then look at the Spurs fixtures, conversely, they've got home to Bournemouth, where they've got to. I mean, Bournemouth, we know that they've been doing really well recently and giving themselves a fighting chance to stay up. But Spurs would have to fancy getting 3 points at home if they've got any kind of hopes of achieving a top four finish. They then travel to Newcastle away next week when Man United have a blank, and then they host Man United. So I think just the order of fixtures there could, to your point, Badge, where United are still, they're in the box seat, let's be clear. But with
I don't know if they're in the box seat.
No, but you'd expect with Rashford to return. Eric Ten Hag mentioned that he's only going to miss a few games. Martinez looks like, even though it might not be an Achilles tear, it looks like he's going to be out for the season. But
This season's over.
Agreed. But I still feel United still have the class to see this through. But you're right, it could get difficult just with those couple of fixtures. I think there's a couple of other ones that are really interesting. In terms of the Champions League push, we've got Aston Villa and Brighton. Aston Villa, to your point, you mentioned playing Newcastle, Brighton away to Chelsea. Now, you might think, why Brighton? Both Aston Villa and Brighton, you would argue, are dark horses for a fourth spot. Now, do I think they'll get fourth spot? I don't. But if either of those clubs has designs to kind of secure a surprise fourth spot from one of the big boys, they probably need to win tomorrow, or over the weekend. So that'll be interesting. I'll be keeping my eye on that to see if any of those can pick up 3 points in their respective fixtures. The only other fixture that I will pull out, I won't actually go through the West Ham Arsenal game because you were probably expecting me to, but I think the other two games at the bottom, which are interesting, is
wait. What are you doing?
You're
the top of the table guy.
I'll cover
Talk about West Ham Arsenal.
I will cover it, but I'd like to think you will agree.
Yeah, you got 5 minutes.
Southampton home to Palace, Everton home to Fulham. And the reason I mentioned those two games, I think if Southampton lose and Everton win, I do think that's maybe Southampton's race run for the season. I mean, just if you look at the gap, I really do feel like that this could be the weekend where if Southampton lose this weekend and Everton beat a Fulham team that we've been talking about on this podcast that seems to be perhaps their season's petering out. I think that could be curtains for Southampton. Due to popular demand, I will cover the West Ham Arsenal game. A great opportunity for Arsenal. A lot of talk for sure. Last weekend felt like the title running had started. They now obviously need to get back to winning ways if they can. West Ham obviously played in the Europa Conference League. They played pretty much kind of half their starters and then brought some of them on as well. I think they were away to Ghent, a 1-1 draw. But Arsenal, if they've got any designs on challenging City right until the very end, they've got to win. They've got to win this game. Their form would suggest that they will. If they tend to control these games, especially against opposition like West Ham, but of course these are pressurized moments, pressurized weeks. Saliba probably still not back, and that's a real setback for the team. If you look at some of the statistics with Holding playing and Saliba in terms of the technical, where they pass, how they go up the pitch, there's an impact there offensively and defensively. So, but they should have too much for West Ham in terms of just the two respective positions of the clubs. But yeah, let's see. These are big moments in the title race, you feel?
They are. And before we wrap up, I want predictions, man. I want predictions. Ayub, Leeds United, Liverpool, hit me with a score.
What, Leeds and who?
Leeds and Liverpool, hit me with a score.
Leeds and Liverpool. 2-0 Liverpool.
2-0 Liverpool. Good Lord, have some hope, man.
I will go 3-1.
Have you been following Leeds?
Have you been following Liverpool?
I will go for a 3-1 win for Liverpool.
I'm gonna go with I'll go with the 2-2 Liverpool, Leeds Liverpool 2-2. Come out of it with a draw and hopefully have you feeling better. West Ham Arsenal, hit me with it.
2-0 Arsenal.
I'm gonna go.
I hope.
I'm gonna go 2-1 Arsenal. Hopefully.
I think the point you made about Europa Conference League traveling away for that, I think that's going to be huge. 3-0 Arsenal for me in that game. And Forest United, what are we thinking?
Well, you can go first. Go on.
Well, no problem. Forest United, I'm the fan in me wants to say 2-1 United. I think, yeah, I'll stick with it. I think we'll edge it. I think Forest will have their chances to even win it, but I think we'll edge it 2-1.
I don't care as long as United win. I don't care. It's 1-0, 2-0, 10-0, as long as United win.
I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna go for a 1-1 draw. I have a feeling just the number of games, the injuries. I expect United to dominate. Don't get me wrong. I feel like, to your point, Badge, the defense. I just feel like Forest are they'll get a goal somewhere from home at home, and do United have 2 goals in them? I don't know. Question mark.
Yeah. It may be the fan in me that says 2-1. But yeah, perfect. That is all the time we've got for this edition of Just Onside. Remember, before you guys leave, to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell for a notification for our next video. Ayub, thank you very much, mate, for soldiering on. You lasted through the podcast. And we've lost him. No, thank you. Thank you for pulling through for us. And Uwais, thank you for your contribution, mate. So this has been Just Onside. We will catch you in the next episode, guys. And in the meantime, don't stray off.